hopefully I explain myself enough to where I can make this a video. Because Phainon is the most interesting character, I think, out of the reworks, Fate collab. I think his kit is very good for discussion. So just as a all-encompassing summary of what Phainon does, he's a character that kicks out your entire party and enters a state where he does a load of damage. The problem with this is that his turns are very limited to the amount of base speed that he has. And note what I said, base speed. You cannot speed him up. And so Phainon is a character that has a really high floor, but he does not interact with a lot of characters, if at all. There's not a lot of characters that can actively change him or buff him in any way. What effectively happens is he becomes a very low ceiling character because he cannot use a DDD because he kicks out the party members. They can't ult. And if you look at the trend right now with the current best in slot teams, it usually involves supports that actually hit hard themselves, like Tribi or Silverwolf or Hyacinth herself. Phainon is not a character that works well with any of those units because they need to take their turn to do their damage while, Phainon kicks them out. And even if he works well with those units that do damage, Phainon requires his allies to target him to charge his ultimate faster, which obviously leads to more limitations in terms of his teammates. At a baseline, he already isn't interacting with many characters, but with this specific limitation, he's even more handicapped. I think the best way to sum up what Phainon is experiencing right now is he is pretty much the playable version of a Lightning Lord. He cannot interact with mechanics, and that in itself really hurts him, just like Lightning Lord did. Let me pull up Lightning Lord first. Phainon is gonna release as an incomplete character that doesn't interact with many units, but once he gets that unit that actually interacts with him, he's gonna hit so hard compared to everyone else with that unit. Like to this day, there's no other character, even Aglaya, there's no other character that gets more out of Sunday than Jing Yuan, and he's a 1.0 character. Phainon has a similarly strong mechanic. There's gonna be that one character where Phainon gets the most DPS increase out of compared to every other character in the game. And his mechanic is already stronger than Jing Yuan, so that should tell you a lot about his future. At the same time, while Phainon right now is really bad, in terms of like his overall ceiling, Phainon is an extremely strong character. It's just that his ceiling is capped by the supports that he has right now. In the future, he's definitely gonna get more supports that work with his mechanic specifically, that no other character is gonna get that much mileage out of it than he is. And so Phainon is a character that's incomplete, but someday they will keep piecing him together and keep him updated that way. You could look at that as a good thing or a bad thing, because why would you pull for an incomplete character when there's characters that are complete right now, like Saber? But you can also spin it as a good thing, because Phainon right now is weak, but over time he's just gonna keep catching up because of specific supports that give him an edge to his mechanic that nobody else has. So you can look at it at two ways. You can call Phainon completely his ceiling is not that high, or you can call him really good because his ceiling is only gonna keep growing. Because I guess I'll say this too, as much as I feel like Saber is a good character, her mechanic is generic enough that even if you release a support that's specific to Saber, everybody else is gonna get a lot from it too. Maybe when they release a Saber buff, pretty much every other character gets the same amount of increase. For Phainon, that's completely impossible actually, because if it interacts with his mechanic at all, that means it's so specific and it's so short that he's always gonna be the biggest benefactor of something that buffs his mechanic. Now he's not even that weak, just not on top. Yeah, that's a thing too. It's actually better this way because Phainon right now is weaker than he should be. He's pretty much incomplete, but he's a newer character, which means for the early stages of his character, he's gonna get bias in Pure Fiction, Apocalyptic Shadow, and MOC. Because he's weak right now, and he's also getting buffed, right? Like, he's weak right now, but he's getting buffed enough to where he's gonna clear Zero Cycle without his support. And I predict that his support would be coming in like one patch. And by the time that he needs his support is already gonna be released, and his ceiling is unlocked. So you have to keep in mind that just because he's bad at the short term, that's actually gonna be a benefit, because he's gonna get carried by synergy, and by the time the synergy runs out, he's gonna get a support, and that's it. That's a wrap, right? Sure, he's bad now, but he's gonna get carried by synergy until he's not bad. Yeah, that's the thing too, right? When you have a character like this, like Phainon, who's very unique and has a lot of design space to optimize his mechanic, there's a very good chance he's just gonna get a lot of supports that work with him. Whereas if you have a character like, who else is a character here? Description. I guess Firefly, yeah. When you have a unit like Firefly who pretty much released complete, then there's very few ways for her to grow as a character. Even Fugue couldn't get that much out of her outside of her E2. Whereas with Phainon, he's not releasing complete, and his mechanic is so open-ended and so unique that there's a lot of ways he can get buffed by indirectly by a new character. Whereas with other characters, it's just, yeah, they released complete, but also in the future, what's your plan with this unit? Like, the only thing Firefly got from Fugue was this E2. So, if you want my opinion on Phainon, overall, I think he's a really strong character, but his ceiling is clearly handicapped by the amount of supports that he has right now. And with the way Starrail releases supports for their DPSs, especially new ones, especially since 3.0, Phainon's dedicated support is gonna release very soon. And because it's very soon, what's gonna happen is Phainon, even though he has a lower ceiling, is gonna get carried by synergy because he's a newer character. And by the time that he actually needs a teammate that he synergizes with, they've already released. Like right now, his ceiling is not a problem at all. He can still zero cycle if he wants. But by the time he actually couldn't zero cycle, his support should be released by then, and he could zero cycle again. So I think that Phainon is getting doom posted a little too much, because it's not even that he is locked to an exclusive support that's gonna release soon, because Aglaya exists, and Aglaya is meta, and no matter how many Twitter, no matter how many TikTok teams are gonna prove to you, Aglaya is a meta character, and Phainon being locked to a specific support is not a bad thing. That's just the standard now. So I think people are looking at Phainon in a wrong light. Like, it's a little too, I don't want to say it's like close-minded, but I think people should think more about the long-term implication of Phainon's kit, because this is clearly a character that's designed for the long game, just like Jing Yuan was. So doom posting him now isn't, like, you're free to do whatever you want, and if you're a Phainon fan and you felt like he didn't get much of anything, then that's fine, that's your opinion, right? But I don't think it's healthy to doom post about Phainon, because we already know what's gonna happen with him, and what's gonna happen to him isn't a bad thing. I feel like it's better than just being good right now and then getting shafted immediately. Would you say he's kinda like Rappa? I mean, compared to other Super Break characters, I guess so. She has the highest design space, I guess, like the largest design space, where you can buff Rappa. In terms of other Super Break characters, I guess Phainon is closer to Rappa than Firefly or Brotail. Akron is very similar to Phainon too in that regard, yes. But the thing about Akron is that I think they didn't design her well enough, because I really don't like Akron's E2. I really don't, because E2 is kind of a sign of defeat, where they know that 2 Nihility is just so bad that putting in another Harmony is outright just gonna be a buff. I don't like Akron's E2 at all. I feel like that's a sign of defeat of the design, even though it's a very cool design to have 2 Nihility units. Yeah, again, I think Phainon is getting way too doom posted, because we already know what's gonna happen with this character. We already know that he's gonna be like Lightning Lord, and he's just gonna get another specific support to make him OP and then keep making him OP as time goes on. Like, personally, I'm not gonna play Phainon, but his design space is not bad. Like you have to admit, his design space is not uniquely bad compared to other characters. Like, you know how easy it is to buff Phainon? You know how easy it could be? How can you buff Phainon in a way that other characters won't? This is a huge buff to nobody except Phainon. It's just as easy as that. That's already a 20% DPS increase. What else can you do? Let's say they release a sustain, and what that sustain does is just a 1-turn but an invulnerable shield. For everyone else, that's useless and unreliable. But guess what? Phainon is not like a normal unit. There's so many ways you can buff Phainon that other characters just wouldn't be able to do much with. How about this one? Like, come on. There's so much you can do with Phainon just to increase his DPS, while everybody else doesn't get much from it. So yeah, this character right now has a really low ceiling, but there's so many ways you can buff him just by adding new characters and new mechanics. It's very simple. As simple as something like this is already a 20% DPS increase. So yeah, Phainon is getting undeserved doom posting. That's my hot take. I don't know if that's actually a hot take, but yeah, I guess I'll end the video here if I do clip this and make this a video.